Everyone. So for week 6, I decided to focus on existing documents, records, and artifacts as a type of data collection. So these are all of the different things that are included in documents, records, and artifacts. There are various things that you could collect. You could use previous grades from students or test scores. A lot of these different pieces of data you could gather from your district office. If you were interested in using some sort of demographic data for your study, this would fall into that category. So if you are using documents, records, and artifacts, you're using data that already exists. You're probably going to need to get access and permission from your school district to access this data or use this data in some way. And a concern or something to consider is that these data were collected for a different reason than the action research study that you're conducting, but now you're using that data for your study. And some other things to consider is that sometimes this can be overwhelming because you get a plethora of data that you aren't necessarily prepared for. There might be a lot of irrelevant data within all of this excess data. So it's important to come up with a plan to organize that. And something like a common data form is a really important procedure if this is the type of process that you're considering using as a form of data for your study. This is an example of a type of data collection form that you could use. This person was doing a study on discipline and absences. So this was the form that they used to organize the information that they got from their district office. So this can help organize you, but it can also help you measure for the quality of the data that you're collecting. And it can also help you focus the data that you're going through so that you don't end up with unnecessary things that you don't need. So when we're talking about existing data and using that for your study, that is a qualitative form of research. So this is a great resource to give you some additional research questions that can kind of inform your study in a way similar to when we're using a literature review to inform ourselves. You also might use this to derive new or additional interpretations or conclusions that you might not have found if you were doing a different type of research finding. So this can help you interpret the data that you're using as well. And there are some different types of questions that this technique can answer. If you're doing exploratory research questions, you might also use this to re-examine your target audience and their perceptions or experiences in a classroom. It can also help you gather different information about the current students that you had compared to how students have done in previous years. And lastly, if you have a question that is regarding demographic data of your students, this would fall into that category and help you answer those research questions as well. So there are some strengths and limitations with using this type of data. This type of data is usually really dependable, it's accurate, and it can be a really great point to start at before you start considering maybe some additional data that you might need to collect. If you're using things like student portfolios as your existing data, this can also give you a greater understanding of the classroom culture and how that teacher, if you're using something from a different person's classroom, how that teacher is perceived by their students or how their lessons are perceived. And it's also pretty economical, both cost-wise and time-wise. Someone else has already done all of this legwork for you. So you're using research that someone's already completed. So it saves you some time, and it also saves you some money as well because you're not the one completing the research. You're using that research that someone else has already collected. Some limitations with using existing data are that some of the things that fall into this category might be difficult to quantify. So if you are using things like classroom artifacts or portfolios, it can be difficult to represent those numerically within your study. Also, there can be an excess of data. It might be overwhelming to both you and to the people that are looking through your study and looking through your research. Some other limitations are that you're probably going to need to get special permissions from your district, and you may get so much data that you might need assistance with going through demographic data. Also, since this research was collected for a different reason, that does save us some time and it is economical, but it might not fulfill all of the needs that you require in your study. As far as validity and reliability go, I would say that I really don't have a ton of concerns about it as far as that's concerned. One minor concern would be that you might feel compelled to add data that's not significant, or it could misconstrue the focus of your research if you're adding some unnecessary data because you have so much of it, you might feel you need to add more than you think you do. From an ethical perspective, you need to make sure that you're following your district's procedures for securing access to that data, and also that you're reporting the results of any analyses of that data in an ethical manner. Also, make sure that you can trust that data, that the data that you are using from previously that maybe someone else has collected, you need to make sure that they, when they were collecting that method, used reliable sources, that they are a person that considered the ethics of that data before they collected it as well. These are some of the sources that I used. I used our Mertler article that was shared with this week. I also used our textbook Mills, and this is an outside source, this last one that I used to help inform my assignment.